Good evening and welcome to Malts and Meeples. That is very high on that camera. Hope that everybody has had a great day, and I apologize for that adjustment midstream. But today we're going to be diving into Gen Con 2022, things that I'm looking forward to, as of demos that are currently on the Board Game Geek preview list for Gen Con 2022. And, well, there are 120 different games to go through, unless, of course, there are more that show up. And, well, it's going to take a little bit to get through them all. Definitely some that I'm less interested or some that I know more about that I can talk to. So let's get into all of that. But of course, I always have the drink. Today, old-fashioned. Again, this is just with the Aztec chocolate bitters. And yeah, it's good. The chocolate flavor is very solid. Now, I realized, hopefully this works because I hadn't checked on the screen that I was sharing. So, yes, but I do need to move myself probably down there, flying all over the place for you. Probably a few noises you can hear from upstairs. Toddler is still, well, going to bed, theoretically. Starting off here, one that I'm interested in seeing. This I actually talked about before, which is going to be Raw from 25th Century Games. This is going to be, who knows what edition they'll have there, most likely the retail for demo. But Raw is a classic Reiner Knizia game, auction game. Ooh. Yeah, that makes sense that you would be slightly biased towards Robotech Reconstruction, Dr. Wick's board games. That is, I'm not familiar with Robotech. I've heard the name, I believe, before, but I haven't looked into it too much. So, with Raw, it's like I said, it's a classic auction game. I was much more interested in seeing the copy there until I grabbed a copy of the previous edition used. It's a very fun game, so one that I already own, but I might be excited to see the fancier version. Then we have Dragonfest. Well, then we have Adam's Apple Games LLC. We have Dragonfest. Build your nest of gilded eggs by harnessing the floating magical rings. It sounds cool in theory. I wish there was an image for it. For humors, this is one I thought that I'd heard of before, but it looks a little social deduction-like, which is not my cup of tea. We have Autobahn, a hand management game from Alley Cat Games. Alley Cat Games makes some interesting games out there. I haven't played a ton of them. This one, an economic game, again, probably not my cup of tea, but the cover looks pretty. With the 7.4, I'm presuming it's a re-implementation of a game, but I'm not sure. Then this one I'm definitely interested in. I almost backed First in Flight when it was on Kickstarter. This is going to be a deck building style of game where you're building up your deck in order to fly as far as you can while going around kind of a rondel of actions. I'm really interested in this one. It looks like it has a historical aspect to it too, with actual people who were involved with some of those first flights. And good to know that Matthew and Ben have worked together a fair amount before. This is one from Artana Games, which is, I believe, part of Genius Games, or at least sharing a booth with them, that I'm really excited to see. Next up, we have Betrayal at House on the Hill 3rd edition. I love Betrayal at House on the Hill. I don't know that I need the 3rd edition, but from Avalon Hill, this one, definitely curious about it. Hero Quest, much less curious about. I've never played Hero Quest. It's a classic game that just wasn't part of my childhood growing up. So this frozen horror expansion to the game doesn't really draw me in any more than the original game did. On the other hand, we have Risk Shadow Forces. This is going to be a legacy style game of Risk, which I played Risk Legacy. It's a very much Risk with a few things that you open up. Risk Shadow Forces sounds like that again. I don't have a group to play it with at this point in time, but definitely one I am curious to check out. Mainly because it's a legacy game. If it was just a new version of Risk, I wouldn't be interested in it. Basenti has Mischief Faction, political and gerrymandering, hidden roles, deduction, party game. And again falls into that, looks like it's a social deduction game. I really don't enjoy social deduction games, so probably not one for me. But Wrestle Legacy? Or Wrestle Legacy? Now, that is a theme that interests me a whole lot more, because I enjoy pro wrestling. I understand it is completely absurd. It is a soap opera for guys, but that is still a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, I am very curious about this one. So let's see, Dr. Witt's board games. What player count games are you getting to play mostly right now? I feel like there's kind of 3 different ranges, or 3 different counts. It's either 2-player, which probably happens every week, or there's kind of those 3, 4, 5, kind of the standard player count that happens, but that's mainly for my campaign games. And then when I do a game night, generally it's a larger player count. So I would say probably that 2-player count is what I'm playing most at right now. Which I'd love to play a little bit more at higher player counts, but it's still tricky to get a lot of people together. Power Core, Call of Cthulhu. Hand management, take that card game. Take on the role of an alliance of 2 nightmarish creatures from Cthulhu mythos. I am actually not that interested in this one. I like my Cthulhu mythos, but I'm not a big fan of take that in games, especially if it's going to be like a heavier take that element to it. If there's maybe a couple take that type of cards to it, I'd be more inclined to check it out. But from Board and Dice, I don't know much more about it. So it's not one that I'm going to be like, okay, there's no way I would look at this, but also it's not going to be one that I immediately seek out. Then we have Look at the Stars from Bombix, a roll and write, it looks like, where you're drawing the constellations. Okay, this one I hadn't noticed before. I'm going to add that one to one that I'm interested in checking out if I can. I'm a sucker for roll and writes, so definitely curious about it. And Sea Salt and Paper from Bruno Cathala and Théo Rivière. This is a folding game? I do not know what this is, but that is curious. That is curious, and I always like a game with a good gimmick or something different than what I've seen before. So definitely want to check it out. Motor City Games. I'm trying to remember. They're the roll and write company that did Three Sisters, most recently Motor City. I haven't checked out Three Sisters yet. I do have from that design team Fleet the Dice game, which I found good. Not maybe my top roll and write, but I didn't actually back Motor City just because I love the box and wasn't so sure about the board. Wasn't so sure about the sheet that you were filling in. It looked like a lot, and I wasn't completely convinced that the theme and everything was going to work for me. Next up from Breaking Games, we have a couple games here. Chroma, I remember seeing this one on, I believe it was played on the Dice Tower, and how you layer tiles to create different colors of light, which is a really cool idea. And then it came to Kickstarter, which was, it still looked really cool. I think this could be a very fun game to play. And it costs too much for what I feel like the game is. I was going to say I could look at my Fleet the Dice game to see who the designers are on that, but it's not on the side of the box that is facing me. We have Mansplaining. If you want to create a title that makes me less interested in a game, that's a good way to do it. Now, something like this, I hope, is better than your standard Target party game or your standard mass market party game. But still, it's a party game that's going to have to sell me a really good game that I'm not sure this theme looks like it can do for me. I think for a lot of groups, this could be a really good game. For me and my group, probably one that we'd pass on. Then Brotherwise Game. Brotherwise Games actually has one that is on the to buy list, potentially, we'll be talking about that next Monday. But they have Castles by the Sea. This is going to be a sandcastle building game, which is a really cool theme. I saw this one on Kickstarter. I'm going to actually tag it as interested just so I remember to check it out. I'm going to be taking all my 60 titles that you can not really see the number up here in this corner and seeing about demoing them. We also, this one's going to be kind of that 3D spatial puzzle of building up a sandcastle. Really cool. Don't know much more about it than that. Empire's End, a Civ style game, auction game. Civilization style games are an area that I'm woefully kind of behind in terms of I haven't really played them. Again, so much of this kind of ties into, does it match my group? And a bigger Civ style game, not so much. I have a few people I could play it with, but generally my gaming group we lean a little bit lighter or a little bit more towards those campaign style games. So Empire's End could be intriguing to me, but not one that I'm seeking out. Fall of the Mountain King. This is a follow-up prequel to Hall of the Mountain King, though a different type of game from Burnt Island Games. Let's see. Dr. Witzk. Current one is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. We're on the third expansion for it, or the third big story for it. So actually going to be playing that tomorrow, which is going to be fun. And after Gen Con, for my Wednesday streams, I am going to be starting up Stars of Ikarios, to at least stream through a handful of games to show off that one, give you an idea if it's something that you would like to play. I've heard really good things about Fall of the Mountain King. Don't know enough about it to say one way or another. I would probably check it out, and I'm curious about things that Burnt Island Games puts out, so probably gonna swing by their booth and check that one out. Katan Studios, we have the 3D expansion for Seafarers and Knights and Cities, or Cities and Knights. One that I enjoy Katan. I especially actually enjoy Katan with the Seafarers expansion in it, but as cool as the 3D stuff looks, it's not one that has hit the table in ages. I actually got rid of my copy not that long ago, not of the 3D one, but just regular copy. So things like this expansion for Seafarers and Cities and Knights, or Catan Dawn of Humankind, they tend to interest me a little bit less. Then from CMON, we have a few different games here. We have Looney Tunes Mayhem. Going to be a team-based fighting game, which is interesting. So two to four players. I'm assuming it's 2 or 4 players if you're doing teams. Not that exciting to me. I have my team-based fighting game that I love in Super Fantasy Brawl, and on my shelf to play still, I have Dragon Prince Battle Charge from Brother Wise Games, and those are kind of my head-to-head dudes on a map type game in terms of fighting back and forth. Or if I want to do that in a bit more abstracted way, I have everything for dice throwing, and that gets played a ton. I love dice throwing, so I feel like I should check this out. Looney Tune Mayhem or Teen Titan Go Mayhem down here, but it's not super high on my list to check out. Then we have the Scooby-Doo board game. Scooby-Doo board game actually a bit more interesting to me because it is a cooperative one. And the Scooby-Doo theme feels, it's not really that much more unique, say, than Looney Tunes, but Scooby-Doo just is a story that I like a little bit better. I don't know why. I have no strong connection to it in terms of nostalgia or anything like that, but I would be more apt to check this one out. We'll put an interested down. I am curious about all of these because, I mean, CMON campaigns with their minis are really interesting. Dropping down here to a roll and write, we have Zombicide Gear Up. I am interested in demoing this one. I'm actually less interested in buying this one. It looks like you're upgrading weapons, fighting monsters, and eventually facing off against a big bad. When I've seen it in their streams, it looks fine. It doesn't look like it does, I don't know, as much as I'd hope. Could be cool. Could be one that works well. Cooperative is different for a roll and write game. So, curious about that. Zombicide Undead or Alive. I'll be curious to see what they have to demo for this. I have Zombicide Undead or Alive coming. I think I went with two-way shipping. So, theoretically, the first box would be shipping out this year. They might be shipping it all at once. I'm really not completely sure on that one. CMYK. I don't know really anything about this except for Quacks & Co. was up for the Kinderspiel this year. And so this must be an... Oh. Looks like maybe this is just the game, or maybe it's a spin-off from it. I'm not sure actually on this one. Again, I'm assuming it's going to be, since it's with the Quacks & Co., it's going to be a little bit more focused towards families, families with kids, things like that, which could work really well. I have a 3-year-old, almost 4, who he's not into too much with games yet, but he has his few little games that are on his shelf so that he can play with them. He's interested in what I have on my shelf behind me, but knows not to pull them off the shelf. Then we have from Crafty Games, Buru, Auction, Economic Game, a midweight Euro. I don't dislike Euros. It's just that I tend not to seek them out. So, for example, I had Raiders of the North Sea on my shelf for years before finally getting that to the table. I had a good time with it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Actually, I ended up tied with the other person I was playing with, and he won based off of one of the tracks. I forget which one. But I just don't pull them off the shelf that often. It doesn't have the toy factor. Almost, I want to say that some other games that I'm more apt to when I'm just looking for a fairly casual type of game. And a lot of Euros tend to be a little bit more heavy than that. So then we have Tabriz, Tabriz as well, a meeple moving game of careful planning and quick action in a bustling Persian bazaar. So, toy factor. If I know that